What's your most shameful NSFW moment? When I was with my ex, we did some long distance for a while. While I'm not about sending nudes after not seeing each other for a long time, you kind of get an urge to see the other person naked. So, nudes were exchanged. She was mostly interested in close-ups of my erect pen, so I send those. Upon returning home, I discovered that she had set a picture of my erect pen as my profile picture in her phone, meaning that if I'd call her, my pen would be presented on the screen in all its glory. I told her this was a very stupid idea. What if I'd call, and her phone was laying around somewhere? She said she never had her phone laying around so no one would see. I didn't think much of it. A few weeks later, we were having dinner with her parents, and she was talking about getting a new phone. Her father, with a straight face and in between 2 bites of his food, remarked, "Gee, if you get this new phone, does that mean you'll install a different picture for when he calls you?" I died 1,000 deaths. Story 2. My HS girlfriend many decades ago giving me an enthusiastic BJ, right at the very moment when her mother came home. It startled my GF to the point she accidentally inhaled my comm and jumped up, headbutting me in the nose. Literally seconds after her mom burst into her room to see her daughter buck nude, on all fours, coughing out jizz like a cat with a hairball, and me, buck nude, with a heart erect and covered in red liquid. Story 3. I have vitiligo, meaning patches of my skin have no melanin at all. It's not very noticeable as I'm fairly light-skinned, and except for a couple patches on my hands, it's mostly on my pen. When I was maybe 15, a girl I had a crush on noticed the patches on my hands and asked about it. I explained what it was, and she asked if I had it anywhere else. I answered, as I said, it's mostly on my pen. She kind of chuckled and said, "So it looked like a cow?" I said, "Yes, it does in fact look like a cow." She said, "I would love to see it." I said, "Yeah, it's weird," turned around and walked away, completely and entirely oblivious. 1. A couple of women have asked if I'm him. No, none of the stories match mine. This woman worked with me on the Orcas Islands, Washington, between 1998 to 2002. She had short hair and was a hippie. Apparently, according to her comments at least, a ton of men have vitiligo on their genitals, so if you have a missed connection story, there's about 40 guys here who have cow pen. 2. How did I miss something so obvious? I was extremely insecure about my body. It was very common for me to assume that women were joking when they were hitting on me, and I've since been told by a number of women I went to high school with that I was completely oblivious to their advances. Even when I did date before college, I absolutely ruined the relationship by being so insecure and uncomfortable with the idea that women would actually be attracted to me. 3. To those of you thinking she wanted to see it so she could just tell her friends. No, this woman was incredibly sweet, kind, and friendly. One of the reasons I had a crush on her. She never gossiped and was always very understanding and thoughtful to everyone. She was really one of the nicest people I've ever met. One of the reasons why, in addition to how smoking hot she was, I absolutely could not believe she was actually interested in me. Story 4. I was very young, like 10 or younger, and I would stay up late at night to look at adult film. I was in the 90s, so there was no yellow hub or anything, and I was mostly just looking up site for adult film and get excited at the free sample. One night, all of a sudden, I feel a lot of guilt for looking at adult film and felt like I did something evil. I walked up to my mom, crying, and basically turned myself in of looking up an erotic film as if I killed someone. To my mom's credit, she didn't mock me or yell at me or anything. She just laughed a little and gave me a talk about how it is okay to be attracted to women and want to see naked body. Just need to do it in a safe and healthy manner. Looking back, I'm always very embarrassed about the whole incident, but also a little proud of my mom for being so open and chill. Commenter. I had a little magazine with erotic stories, not even any photos, hidden in my dresser. My mom found it and was pissed, saying I must get my perverted side from my dad because I certainly didn't get it from her. Little did she know I was already aware of her and my stepdad's several adult VHs and sex toys. Story 5. My HSGF and I were having sex in the sideways laying down cuddling position. Mom walked in to show me a new Christmas decoration. To her it looked like we were just cuddling, but she sat on the bed, inches away from me, actively inside her, and proceeded to talk about the decoration for like 10 minutes. I wonder if she knew. They never cared much about that stuff, so I think she was just oblivious. Story 6. My dad caught me editing the game files of The Sims to replace the female underwear textures with underwear that just makes them look nude, looked up reference material, and edited them in Photoshop. That a lot of effort to put into something so depraved. Commenter. Oh man, there was a mod for the original Sims called Art Studio or something where you could upload pictures with frames and hang them up in your Sims houses. Horny teenage me uploaded a ton of porn pics to hang in every Sims house like a completely normal person would. Thankfully, I was the only person in the house who ever played the game, so no one ever saw my weirdo houses full of porn pics on every wall. Story 7. When I was 12, my younger sister walked in on me playing Fondle the Dongle. I told her I couldn't pee and was trying to pump it out. She told my mom out of worry, said I needed a doctor to help me pee. When mom confronted me about what my sister was saying, I then had to explain it to her. Story 8. I grew up in an incredibly rural area with dial-up internet. I was only able to load nude images from the top down. I finished before it loaded past the neck. My fetish is a pretty face and a beautiful, happy smile. Story 9. First time I looked an erotic film, I got a virus on my laptop. It turned my camera on and locked my laptop. Said this is the FBI PayX fine. I was white as a ghost and went and told my mom and dad. Stupid me didn't realize it was fake until dad showed me it was bullcrap. The fright of it got me. To this day, dad still laughs about it and comments about it randomly. Commenter, I also got this virus as a teen. First thing I did was to text my best friend so he could bring me to the police station the next day so that I can explain myself. Thankfully, I pressed the restart button shortly afterwards, which fixed everything. Story 10. In the 90s, early 2000s, we bought a pub and moved into it. It had a big screen downstairs, and we lived above, but Sky Sports was so expensive for the business account, we basically hooked the giant screen to our box upstairs, so whenever the sport was on, it would show on the screen downstairs, so we couldn't watch TV upstairs, except what was being shown on the big screen when this was happening. Anyway, one Sunday evening around 10 p.m. after the sport, bearing in mind the sport finished at 6 p.m., I was freely browsing through channels because the giant screen has been wound up into the ceiling, and my 14-year-old self came across some softcore adult film. Curious, I started watching it. Suddenly, there was a big buzz from the phone that connected to downstairs. I answer it. It's my mom, with laughing in the background. What are you watching? I was just flicking through channels. Well, you've stayed on that one for a while, haven't you? I forgot about the small TV in the bar area. It was still on and was showing the entire pub what my horny 14-year-old ass was watching. I was mortified. Luckily, my mom never brought it up again, and neither did any of the customers, thankfully. Story 11. I was violently ill in my fiance's house where we were living. While he was at work and his dad was work from home, I needed my mom to take me to the hospital. I screamed for my father-in-law's help, who entered the bathroom to my nude body, crapting and puking at the same time in his bathtub. He called my mom for me, and we never spoke about it. Story 12. In middle school, my friend got her boobs and she wanted me to touch them. We probably spent 30 minutes every day before school groping each other in the back of the library until the librarian caught us and we were suspended. I wish I could say I enjoyed it, but going to first period with a raging boner was not ideal every day. Story 13. I was once extremely drunk and staying in a very expensive hotel in Hollywood. I went to bed as I should. I woke up in the middle of the night and had to pee. I walked through the bathroom door and closed it behind me. I then realized that that wasn't the bathroom door, but rather the room door. I was locked out of my room in a fancy hotel, drunk off my ass, wearing only my underwear. I went to the elevator lobby where there was a phone and called the front desk and explained my situation. They said they would send someone up. I realized I couldn't wait and continued searching for a place to pee and found a janitor closet with a rolling mop bucket in it. I took a giant piss in the mop bucket and then walked back to my room door, where a bellhop who really didn't want to look me in the eye let me back into my room. I'm very sorry, Mondrian Hotel. Story 14. In high school, my GF wanted me to send a vid where I'm doing myself good through Snapchat. My phone was sort of broken and glitched a lot. Well, half an hour later, she calls me and tells me, "You posted it on your story." Sure, enough I had posted a video of myself spanking the monkey for all my friends to see. My phone had glitched and thought I'd press the story button as well as sending it to her. Story 15. I once tried to smack a girl's ass when she was riding me and whacked myself square in the balls. It made an audible thwack, and we had to stop for a bit while I doubled over in pain. We had a good laugh about it, but I really thought my aim was better than that. Story 16. I thought God would kill me for pleasure herself when I was little, so I barely ever did it. But the house would know when I was doing it because I'd yell, "I'm sorry, God." My family wasn't even religious. I didn't even know where I got that idea from. Commenter. Somehow the idea of your parents being non-religious makes this crap so much funnier. Like, instead of being disappointed, they're just thoroughly confused by their weird kid. Story 17. When I was about 17, I would pretend I was like 18 plus on Habbo Hotel and other stupid sites, and then strike up connections and talk dirty as a religious, sheltered 17-year-old girl can be, with total strangers across the internet who were absolutely far older than I. I used some random unknown actress as my fake DP. My mom found out what I was doing and made me read several entire MSN Messenger conversations out loud to her so I would hear my own shameful words. Absolutely mortified. It was definitely a terrible punishment from my mom, and it did deep damage. But in all fairness, she was very much under the thumb of my dad, who was a minister, and she was totally ill-equipped and just reacted out of her own shame. They've since divorced, both remarried, left religion, and are far better parents and people these days. Story 18. A cheap bachelor party sex toy melted in my bedside drawer after the AC in my room broke for a week. But I didn't know that until I got my hand stuck in it in front of a guy who was asking me out. I opened the drawer and reached in looking for my chapstick while we were talking, and to my absolute horror, I couldn't pull my hand back out. It was completely stuck to something. It turns out that a fake silicone sex toy I got as a gag gift melted around the 3 other real silicone ones and then started to cure again. It was like half-dry superglue, but shaped like a 4-headed banana. It looked weaponized, and crucially, it was stuck to my damn hand. The dude tried to help me, but he just ended up getting it on his hands too. We had to take turns spraying each other with scalding hot water to get it off. I've never been so mortified in my life. Needless to say, we never saw each other again. Story 19. When I was a teenager, I was obsessed with Nirvana. I had all of their albums, a bunch of shirts, and a bunch of books, including a couple conspiracy theory books about him being murdered. Anyway, I got grounded and had all technology taken away from me. One day, I was super horny and having trouble whacking it without adult film. I was mid-whack when I remembered that there was, for some ducking reason, a photo in one of the conspiracy books of Courtney Love's tits. For 2 weeks straight, sometimes multiple times a day, I pleasure himself to Courtney Love's tits in black and white. Shameful. Story 20. I ducked my pillow. Not even one of those anime girl pillow. Just a regular one. I put on one of my sister's bra on it filled 2 water balloons for realism, and I put my shirt on it for extra touch, and just started having sex of the pillow while grabbing the water boobs. I came. The balloon popped. My bed was wet. Post-nut clarity hit, and I realized I was naked and harassed my own pillow. Story 21. When my friends had to change my hygienic pad at a party in high school, where I was drunk out of my mind. They gave me a shower to wake me up and took off the used pad and put a new one on and helped me get dressed. Not my proudest. In the same vein, I brushed a friend's teeth after a party BC. He was super out of it, but hated the taste in his mouth. We put him on a mattress to sleep, and I got a new toothbrush with a little bit of toothpaste and gently brushed his teeth as he was laying there smashed. Then I put a water bottle and a bucket next to him, and he fell asleep also. Important advice. If you are helping a drunk person go to bed, make sure you put them in lateral sleep position. They lay on their side, and you can use pillows to put against their back and belly to make sure they stay put. If they lay on their back and puke during their sleep, they could choke, drown. Story 22. Here goes. I was 13 and had found my mom's vibrating bullet while she was at work. A little thing coated in rubber with a wire coming out the bottom leading to a little remote to control intensity. I had recently learned guys have G-spots from that scene with Sean Scott and Road Trip, milking the prostate. I was curious, so I proceeded to fully insert it to test it out. Didn't feel a thing from it even at highest setting, so figured it was time pull it out except it wouldn't budge. I was getting worried and tugging with more and more force when the wire snapped off leaving just the bullet inside. Had a mini panic attack before deciding to try pooping it out, which worked. I then washed it several times because the smell of poop on it just refused to go away. I finally gave up and packed it back away where I found it with wire snapped and still smelling of poop. My mom never brought it up and I banned ass play from my life forevermore. Story 23. When I was around 10-11 years old, my dad got my brother and I a computer to use. He set it up in the den and pretty much allowed us free, unsupervised access to it. He had gone out with his friends one night, and my brother, one of his friends, and myself were on the internet just typing in random things and adding .com to it. Now, back in the early 2000s, it didn't take long for us to stumble upon erotic, which led us to clicking on more and more porn links because we were all like, crap, there's naked women on here. Eventually, we bricked the computer and it blue screened on us. Instead of turning it off / unplugging the computer / turning off the monitor, we just left it and went to bed. My dad got home and saw the blue screen, did the old Ctrl-Alt-Delete trick to pull up the task manager, saw that we had erotic film pulled up on the web browser. At this point, he makes us all come out into the den, sits us on the couch, and tries to make us confess to why the computer was blue screened. We, of course, shrugged and acted like we had no clue. He then turned the monitor on and went through the internet history. We all had to sit there while my dad clicked through some of the most heinous, debased crap I've ever seen in my life. The whole time he was just reading out the history, and then he'd say something like, crap, what is wrong with you all? Yeah, that computer did not last very long. Story 24. One time my best friend in high school brought this weird lotion to school. It was a hand lotion that had glitter, smelt really nice, but when you'd squeeze it out, it was bubbly. And when you rubbed your hands together, the lotion would fizz in your hand, kind of like liquid pop rocks or intense carbonation. It was so fascinating, and I always asked to use it on my hands. My friend took a notice, and they bought some for me as a gift for my birthday, maybe Christmas? I don't entirely remember. Either way, they gave me some. It stayed in my bed for a while and lingered around my room, until one fateful night browsing an adult film, I remembered its existence. Thought it would feel really nice to put, down there while I pleasure herself. It would be a fizz on my pussy, I was interested. Put a teeny bit on my finger and tested it. Barely felt it, but what I did feel was strange, so I grabbed a whole handful and smacked it on there. The pain I felt was so immense and sudden, it was like a burning hot fire between my legs. Got up immediately waddling through the hallway like I shat myself and hopped in a bath at like midnight. Even after washing it, it had a lingering feeling, like when you literally burn yourself by fire. I think the hand lotion was also a disinfectant. Afterwards, my pussy was super dry, but I mean, it was probably extremely clean and it smelled nice, so yeah. Story 25. A short, dumb story. I had sex with my boyfriend for the first time during my first year of college. I was a super sheltered, traditional Christian-raised dummy, was taught a lot of stuff incorrectly and had to relearn everything late in life on my own, usually only as it came up, and was very paranoid of pregnancy. Thought of sex before marriage as super taboo, so I definitely felt like a badass playing with fire. At the end, I let him finish on my chest, and then showered it off. Fun was had, fast forward to like a week later. I'm visiting my mom when I have a thought. If I had cum on my chest, and then in the shower it ran down my front, and then I washed my... I got up in the middle of the night and used her computer to start Yahoo answering myself into tears. I didn't dare make a post myself in case it lead back to me somehow. But unsurprisingly, a lot of people had similar concerns from identical situations, and a lot of other people said, yeah, you can get pregnant that way. My mom heard me and came out to ask what was wrong. So 19-year-old me started ugly crying. And I basically told my mom I let my boyfriend finish on my tits, and I think I'm pregnant. Please don't hate me. Epilogue is that she basically eye-rolled at me and said that the chances of getting pregnant for that bordered on ridiculously low, if not impossible, and told me to get on birth control. My mom is actually great. She was just given very bad info when it came to educating me about stuff like sex. And that's the story of how I came to tell my mom my BF gave me a pearl necklace and I thought I could get pregnant from it. Story 26. During a yoga class, my pants split open. I pointed down at my crotch to ask the teacher if I was doing this right, before seeing my member hanging out on the floor. Jumped up as soon as I saw, leaving a stammering teacher behind me. It was his first class after graduating from training as well. Story 27. My first proper girlfriend and I were out walking and came across a bird hide. Not a shooting blind, but a bug wooden shed thing for watching birds from. We got down to it with little delay. About 4 minutes later, a family of 6 walked right in whilst we were in full flow. 4 kids and the parents. For about 3 months, we were terrified we were going to get arrested for exposing ourselves to minors. Story 28. I used to read some weird erotica when I was younger, as I hated all erotic in video form. I distinctly remember reading one that had women in stalls, like cows. They kept using this term, who cow, which at the time I didn't realize was obviously a mashup of the word human and cow. I didn't think much of it, but one time I was talking to a friend and I was trying to remember the term for a female cow. My brain thought, who cow, and I almost said it before catching myself. I know they probably wouldn't have caught on, but it killed me inside that I almost said something from some pretty weird erotica. Story 29. I was in 5th grade when I discovered adult film. Eventually, I got to a site I liked returning to, but it had one of those pages where you had to say you were 18 before it let you look at the stuff. For some reason, I was comfortable roaming the web exploring this new frontier, but I got nervous about lying, saying I was old enough. My solution? I favorited the page that comes right after the confirmation page so that I wouldn't have to lie about my age again. This was on the family computer. Guess how this story ended. Story 30. When I was 17 or something, I was watching adult film in the middle of the night. After I did my deed, I felt a slight pain in my balls, like someone flicked their finger on them. The pain increased to the point that I had to walk it out. After some minutes, I began screaming from the pain when my parents came to my room. Don't worry, I wasn't naked, seeing me in pain on the floor. At that moment, I thought I did something wrong while Pleasure himself, but was too ashamed to tell them. My dad rushed me to the emergency room where I was rushed in and my pants were removed. Laying their banana out, they gave me a nose spray, which halted some of the pain. The doctor then started fondling my balls while the nurse stood next to me, reminding me to breathe because the nose spray stopped the automatic breathing, if that makes sense. All the time my dad is standing there looking, and the only thing I could think at that moment was, oh no, do they think my pen is small? After that, the doctors brought me to another room while my dad was in another room. While going through the halls, I told the doctor I probably know the cause and explained that I was Pleasure himself. I don't remember the doctor's response, but I felt truly ashamed, like I was the only person doing such a thing. Later, the doctor told me I had testicular torsion, which is caused by the balls not being attached to the sac, so I'm living in fear of it happening again to this day. Story 31. I had just started discovering myself around the age of 12 and was starting to watch erotic film. I was already craving to know what pen felt like inside of me, but the closest thing I had to the shape of a pen was a hairbrush with a circular handle. So with this, I went to town until I got tired. About 2 weeks later, I was due for my period, but it was late, and I immediately started freaking out thinking I was pregnant. I decided to tell my mom, bawling my eyes out, apologizing for being pregnant, which confused my mom quite a bit. It was about 30 minutes later that my mom had to re-explain how sex worked and how hairbrushes don't get you pregnant. Story 32. I showed my older sister my pen when I was about 7 or 8. I didn't know what it was all about at the time, but every time I think of it, I pray she doesn't remember me doing that. Story 33. I'm not really ashamed of it, but I came on a GFS face and black shirt before church. She didn't change, so we went while she had a cum stain on her shirt. Story 34. I was 18, came home very drunk from a night out and hopped into bed with my then girlfriend. Fortunately for me, she woke up and was keen to fool around. Me being in the state I was in, didn't have time for lubricant and/or aiming and went in hard and fast. The first and only push led to what I can only imagine as the equivalent of snapping your Achilles tendon, except this tendon wasn't located on my leg. It was in fact my frenulum. Google it. Instantly, I panicked. I turned the light on and told my ex to hang on. I looked down to see that I had basically snapped my banjo string in half and essentially given myself a DIY circumcision. I played it cool. My gut instinct was to run to the bathroom. Once I made it here, I wrapped my wang up in toilet paper like Tutankhamun, emptied out the toothbrush cup holder, filled it with warm water, and stuck my banana in the cup to try to cool it down. It hurt. Tried to sit down on the side of the bath to try not to pass out. Didn't work. Anyway, long story short, I woke up to my ex-girlfriend's dad standing over me at 7 a.m. in the morning, around 3 hours later, after he had followed a trail of blood down the hallway to where he would normally take his morning shower. There I was, laying in the bathtub, passed out, banana wrapped up in toilet paper, shoved inside his toothbrush cup holder, naked as the day I was born, covered in red. My partner at the time fell back asleep after I'd left the bedroom that night and left her poor father to find me blackout drunk in his bathtub. He thought I was dead. I wished I was. Story 35. My HS boyfriend and I were having sex in his attic bedroom, both of us completely naked. I was bouncing and moaning and making a lot of noise with the headboard because we were home alone. Well, his mom came home early, and we had no idea until she was at the top of the stairs calling his name and walked in on me totally naked and riding her son. She took a breath, calmly told us to get dressed and come downstairs. When we did, she told us she was disappointed and asked him to walk me home. He very quietly told her we had planned to go to church youth group afterwards. She let us leave after she picked her jaw up off the floor. That was the first time I'd met his mom. Story 36. Oh boy. Sunday night around 6 o'clock. Extremely religious family. We had finished church earlier, and the pastor and his family were over for afternoon tea. Let me just say, I was a very impulsive kid. I never once thought about doing things before I did them. I was on the family computer, which is about 15 feet away from the dining area where everyone was chatting. While playing games on fetchfeedo.com, only OGs remember, I saw something on the game I was playing that looked like boobies. I was very interested as I had only ever caught glimpses of boobies in magazines and on TV. So without thinking, I typed in nakedwomen.com. Unfortunately, or probably fortunately, the site did not exist. And as Internet Explorer used to do back in the day, it came up in massive writing, nakedwomen.com page not found. As I rushed the type in another website as if my life depended on it, my mother yelled out, "Non-racist name, what is that?" Shaking with mortal fear. I was unable to type in another website in time. Little did I know a quick click of the X would have done the trick. My mother made her way over and read the unfound website out loud for the pastor and everyone to hear. At this point, both my parents, the pastor and his wife, were looking right at the computer screen. Complete silence for a few seconds, and then came the fireworks. What ensued was me crying, being yelled at and getting sent to my room while my mom talked to the pastor. After about 30 minutes, they all came in and gave me a very awkward, very stern talking to. I think I've mostly erased it from my mind from PTSD, but all I know is a 45-year-old man talking to a boy about not looking at boobies online is something I don't want to remember. Grounded for a whole month, no computer for 3 months, and a little PTSD along the way. So yeah, that's it. Either that or the time I got caught ducking the hole of a subwoofer. Story 37. When I lived in a shared house, I decided one evening to shave my pubes. I went to flush the hair down the toilet, but someone was in there. So instead, I considered throwing them out of my second-story window. I know, gross, don't judge me. But then I saw that 2 of my housemates and 2 of their friends were in the spa pool outside the window, so decided not to. What happened next is a blur, but I think I just left them on the windowsill and forgot about them. 10 minutes later, I heard a shriek, followed by someone yelling at me. At first I didn't know what was going on, but then I realized the wind must have blown my pubes out the window and into the spa pool. I absolutely played dumb and refused to admit it was me. I came to the window to see what the fuss was about and acted shocked and outraged that they could accuse of me something so disgusting and weird. Inside, I was cringing like I've never cringed before. I'm actually best friends with one of the guys in the spa, and only recently, years later, did I confess that it was me, but it was sort of an accident. He now finds it hilarious, but I'm sure his fiancée would disagree. Story 38. I was 18, and my girlfriend and me were in her room and doing the deed with the lights off under the covers. And her mom walks in, not realizing what we were doing since the lights were off, and casually starts talking to her daughter. After a little bit, she did realize what we were doing and she storms off. Another time, same place, same girl, same mom. She walks in when I'm sitting at my girlfriend's bed, naked, reaching for my underwear. I was really ashamed. Her mom, too. Story 39. I was at a company mandatory HR meeting with one of my colleagues. This colleague, who we will name G, was a NSFW person in general. He was always funny, but the crap he used to say was so awful. He would always make racist jokes about himself or others. He was Middle Eastern descent and joked about flying planes, going kaboom, or experimenting with pressure cookers at work, etc. At 9 a.m., the lovely HR rep was going into a presentation about racism and what not to say or do, or it will get ourselves or the company sued. She was going over a case that a factory that employed a lot of Mexicans had a white supervisor that called an employee bad word. Now, this sounds ridiculous to myself, a 20-year-old that was half asleep. The HR rep also goes on to say that Taco's son also needed a job. When Taco's son started working there full-time, the supervisor started calling him Taquito. I died. I started laughing and immediately looked at my friend G, who just looked at me deadpan. The dude, who I expected to make the situation even more hilarious, failed me. I was laughing alone and immediately knew I ducked up. Thankfully, no additional meeting and I didn't have to talk to anyone one-on-one, but damn, I'll never forget. Story 40. When I was about 10, my parents were out, so I looked up some adult film on the family computer. Mistake number 1. Then I kept hearing noises and thought someone was in the house, so I ran to my room and called my dad, leaving the computer on. Mistake number 2. My dad rushed home and went around the house looking for an intruder. No one was there. It was just my next-door neighbors. We have a semi-detached house. Then obviously saw what I was looking at on the computer and asked me about it. I told him the intruder must have broken in and searched it up. Story 41. I was 16, first real girlfriend, and I getting hot and heavy on my dad's couch. Small apartment, but he's a doctor and was never home. Supposed to be at work that day an hour away, so all good, right? I hear the door open and yell, "Stop, don't come in." But he's an idiot and walks in on us buck naked holding the cushions over the appropriate regions. The more shameful thing was, a year later, I was doing the same with a different gal and hear the door. He had very much said he was working that night, so I was confused. Turned out my mom had some emergency, so he picked up my older sisters and brought them to stay for a few days. They lived with mom, me with him. It's a small apartment, but you have to take about 10 paces before you could see past the corner to the couch. And this time when I yelled, he had the good sense to hold my sisters back and tell them to wait. A very quick application of clothes, some underwear not included, and one walk of shame past my family, and I waved her goodbye. Story 42. I was in the Navy going through school at Great Lakes Naval Training Center. This is the early 98s, so no cell phones or internet to speak of. Unlike 90% of the other squids, I had a car. That made me the driver for our little clique. Every other weekend, we were in Chicago. We'd group up and get a couple rooms for like 5 guys, knowing there was no way all of us would get some. Idiot Navy boys rarely did. This one weekend, we're in Excalibur downtown. Again, I'm the driver, so I'm sober. Stone, cold, sober. I'm at the bar drinking my 5th or 20th Coke when this woman and I start talking. Woman, not girl, not young lady, proper woman. Things go very well, and she asks me if I want to meet her at her hotel. She gives me the room number. I'm like, hell yeah. Remember, now I'm at the bar with 4 of my friends who are generally inebriated beyond rational thought. So instead of going up to the woman's room, I waited for my buddies to, yeah, damn that. I didn't leave her room until 10 the next morning. It was the experience that taught me young and innocent is crap compared to mature and experienced. So, my buddies, well, of course I hadn't told them where I was going. They ended up doing the absolute best job of making asses of themselves. Got into a fight with some polo shirt bros, and 2 of them went to the drunk tank overnight, which if you're in the military is bad. One of the other ones barely made it back to base, as he'd fallen asleep on the subway. No clue as to why he was on the subway, and became utterly lost somewhere on the west side without his wallet. The 2 jailbirds were taken in front of the commander of our training center. They were confined to base for 3 months and had to attend alcoholics seminars. The guy who barely made it back was written up for losing his base ID, all because I had to get laid. 10 tenths would do it again. I'm 50, and I remember that night with complete clarity. Story 43. Well, this is not necessarily NSFW, but it is somewhat embarrassing. For over a decade, I worked in a high-rise office building. At noon, I would change into a t-shirt, shorts, and runners to go for a walk, jog. One day I changed and took the elevator from the 8th floor to ground, and when I arrived there, I checked my shorts pocket to make sure I had my passkey. However, I was surprised to find that I had no pockets. Well, I quickly realized that I had neglected to put on my shorts and was standing in the lobby, overflowing with the lunch crowd, in my underwear, boxers. So instead of a jog, I took the stairs and sprinted up 8 floors. Great workout. Luckily, I was able to get back into our office without, I don't believe, anyone noticing. A great rationale for wearing dark-colored boxers. Story 44. When I little, for some reason, I refused to wear underwear, and my dad would ask me if I was wearing it. Normally, I would lie. He would call me out and tell me to go out some on, and I would then family Christmas came around. Same as always, I wasn't wearing any, and he asked. I lied. But this time, this mother ducker, literally, ripped down my shorts, and my child ding-dong waved a one-eyed salute to my entire family, and I ran away humiliated. I never forgot underwear again, though. I am not a victim, folks. My dad never touched me, nor did this teach me to allow other people to touch me. I don't walk around giving the one-eyed salute to strangers, and I'm not traumatized. Story 45. I had started taking antidepressants when I was around 20 and didn't take delayed ejaculation as a side effect seriously. It was like blowing up a balloon to infinity and it never pops, or shaking a soda that doesn't explode after being opened. That being said, after pleasure myself started taking more than 10 minutes, I stopped. Around this time, I also started dating someone with a high libido, and she was okay with me not being able to finish, but was into a lot. One of those things was wanting me to stroke myself on her. Let me tell you the awkwardness that goes from stroking yourself in front of a smiling girl for half an hour. That smile turns into an bored look as we both sink into what we're doing, kink unlocked. When she gave a defeated, "Are you close?" the floodgates opened, and after being delayed for near an hour, there was a lot. Even worse, I definitely made a guttural sound of mostly air as my knees almost gave out while it happened. Yeah, so I'm on a different antidepressant now. Story 46. I had food poisoning and my boyfriend had to clean up the entire bathroom. Woke up in the night feeling pretty bad, so I got up to go be sick. As soon as I got to the bathroom, I felt it coming, so I threw myself at the toilet and started throwing up. As I did, I started crapting all over the floor. We both sleep naked, so I wasn't wearing any pants. Which surprised me, so I had to jump up, sit on the toilet, and aimed my sick into the sink, which thankfully was right next to me and within reach. All the noise woke my boyfriend, who came and knocked on the door, so I screamed, "Don't come in." But him being the caring and loving boyfriend, he has decided he would come and hold my hair out of my face for me, not realizing the absolute horror he was walking into. It was a tiny bathroom, just big enough for the bath, the toilet, and a sink. So not only was there liquid crap all over the floor, it had sprayed up the back of the door, the wall, the side of the bath, and the sink base. It was a bathroom in the center of the house too, so no windows to open for the smell. He made me get in the shower while he cleaned up everything. We've never spoken about it since, but we've since gotten married, so he still loves me, I guess. We do keep a bowl in our new bathroom in our new house now in case we ever need to throw up while on the toilet so that we don't clog the sink. Story 47. When I was like 12 maybe, we got a new family computer with a scanner. I stayed up late playing with it in the den. After scanning everything I could find, I scanned my hands, face, feet. I even scanned my ass. It was so slow though, the scans would be all ducked up and jittery from me moving. So I flipped a small trash can, put the scanner on top, and knelt down front of it. I worked up a decent boner and closed it in the scanner. Mid-scan, the door to the den slowly opens. It's my sleepy dad in his underwear looking very confused at me, doggy-styling the new family scanner. "What are you doing?" "I'm scanning my banana." He didn't react at all. He just backed out and closed the door. It was 5 seconds of my life maybe, but it haunts me. I think about how I said, "I'm scanning my banana," in sort of a defiant, "What the hell do you think I'm doing" kind of way, but chose the word banana, which didn't match the tone. Like I could have said balls or junk or whatever. Story 48. My ex and I were dating. We were 17, and on our first date, we wanted to have sex. We were out at night, and we're on this little pass behind a church. One kiss somehow led to clothes coming off. There was a church to our side. Our school was across the street, and we could see houses less than 100 feet from where we were. She said, and I quote, "They won't see anything," and that was enough for me. A couple of people walked down the pass and saw us. We had to pick up our clothes and sprint away half naked. We ended up finding a spot in the dark near our high school to finish. It was embarrassing, but hey, your first time has to be special. Story 49. It's not that bad, but I had been pleasure herself with a sex toy. And then when I finished, my dog grabbed it from under my pillow and my stepdad found her chewing it. Then a second time I got a new sex toy and the same dog grabbed the packaging and dropped it at my mom's feet. Story 50. So I'll preface this by saying my girlfriend, at the time, and I and all our family are white. We lived in a small town with very little diversity, so everyone pretty much only spoke English. So girlfriend and I decided to learn Spanish. Took it several years in high school, and we both got pretty fluent with it. So we would talk Spanish to each other when we wanted to have private talks or talk dirty with each other when others were around. I still vividly remember having a super dirty conversation at her family's dinner table while the family was totally oblivious. We thought it was awesome that no one knew what we were saying. We dated for a good 2 or 3 years in high school. One day in college, long after we had broken up, she called me to tell me that she had just found out her dad speaks and had spoken perfect Spanish for a very long time. So apparently, he heard every conversation, dirty talk we had, and just never said anything or gave any reaction. I still get embarrassed thinking back to the stuff we talked about, thinking no one would hear us. Story 51. Back in college when the no-fap trend really started popping off, I was about 2 weeks into it when I was at a girl's apartment and she turned down my advances. Ended up falling asleep in her bed and woke up at about 4 a.m. in a puddle of cum. Huge stain on her bedsheets and everything. I walked commando in skin-tight jeans that morning back to my dorm in the freezing cold, and it was never brought up again. Story 52. When I was about 10, my dad unlocked my phone, my git gave him the passcode, and looked at my often visited sites. I obviously told him that my best friend did that, but I don't think he believed it. Story 53. After reading a few others, I remembered one of mine. So, as most guys are aware, most teen boys go through a phase of extreme sexual desire that drives them to use anything available for pleasure himself if they are creative enough. One of the things I remember doing was trying out different substances as lube for pleasure himself. Most things that you use on your body are suitable for a rub and tug. One thing that is not suitable, however, is cinnamon toothpaste. I thought that it would have that icy hot kind of cooling feeling. It did not. It felt like I had stuck my pen in Satan's a hole. The fury of 10,000 suns flooded my senses, killed the mood, and left me flaccid in a cold shower to contemplate my choices while standing over a now cherry red pen. Story 54. Coming from a very strict religious family, I would sneak downstairs and watch USA Up all night with Rhonda Shear. That was probably my first exposure to dirty TV. Story 55. At a CCF summer camp, I was lying face down on warm ground in my tight tracksuit, watching a demonstration of something. I don't remember what. At the end of the demo, I stood up and got ready to run back to the accommodation, not realizing that laying face down on the ground had led to my having an enormous erection that was entirely visible. Oops. Story 56. I was a kid when I had a foot fetish. My friend's dad's feet in particular got me excited. I knew it would be extremely awkward to try something with his feet, so I thought I found the next best thing that will feel like I was playing with his feet. His flip-flops. There was one time he came home and then left. I saw a pair of his flip-flops by the doorway and had this idea that his flip-flops would be like playing with his feet without playing with his feet. I grabbed them when no one was looking, went to the bathroom, and had myself a great time. It felt like I was next to them and let the fantasy commence. Then post-nut clarity happened, and I realized how weird this was and regretted it. I cleaned the mess up and put them away. This has become one of the memories that keeps me up at night when my brain decides it's time to bring up every embarrassing moment. Story 57. Not that shameful, but I had sex with my wife in her sister's bed. Her sister is a massive narcissistic git, and that's all we thought we could do to get back at her. We were 20 at the time, and her sister got a new mattress when we were around 24. Was fun knowing she didn't know. Story 58. Oh yeah, and one time I got to my ex-GF's house and no one was home. So we proceeded to have super loud sex in the kitchen and then in her room, where we put some music on as well. After we finished, I got up and went to the kitchen for some water. Of course, I was naked because no one was home and I love being naked. So I get the water and as I'm going back up to her room, I hear a noise in the living room. I look to the left and sure enough, there are her parents staring at me. Mom gave a weird kind of grimace, but Dad merely looked at me like he'd just come back from the war. I left and didn't go back there for about a month, and it took me about 2 or 3 more before I could even make eye contact with Dad. He seemed fine though. I was way more embarrassed. Turns out they'd gone home looking for some private time as well, and for some reason hadn't said hello when we waltzed in. Also, they were pretty strict. So until then, they had the understanding that their little princess was still a virgin. Every time I traveled with them after and before this, we stayed in different rooms and the whole shebang. Story 59. One drunken night, my now wife and I took some naughty photos on her digital camera. The next day, we took a drive an hour from home, and we get a text from her mom to let us know she's borrowed the camera for a girls' trip to Center Parcs. What could we say? We were stunned at what was happening. For some reason, we chose to say nothing. Fast forward to later that day, whilst looking through photos of the day with all her friends, a photo of her daughter with her boyfriend's banana in her mouth flashes on the screen. Every now and again, this comes up as an anecdote during family dinners because her family find it an amusing story, whilst I sit there and get lower and lower in my chair. Story 60. In high school, I had this boyfriend whose grandparents had a little pool house, really just a shed with a hot tub in it. We'd say we were going to go stick our feet in the hot tub, which we did sometimes do, but usually we just wanted to fool around in there. BF was really into exploring my limits, and I am a degenerate, so he was really getting into the dirty talk and kept spanking me while we did doggy. His mom walked in right about the time that her son started in on a monologue about how depraved and desperate I was, which made me awesome so hard I started crying. I started begging him to come all over my ass. Please let me feel your big fat load and all that, and he obliged. Then we looked up and saw his mom frozen in horror in the doorway. She had a very long talk with me afterwards about respecting myself. Worst part was that she actually was pretty chill about the fact that two 18-year-olds were hooking up. She was just really disturbed by the fact that I liked being talked to like that. I felt so ashamed. But then the next time I had sex with her son, I got off even harder because I kept remembering how dirty and guilty she made me feel. So I guess technically I was thinking about his mom while I having sex with him. Story 61. Just got done having sex and was laying in pre-coital bliss. I'm dozing off and she asks me if I'm into toys. Now, mind you, I was half asleep. So I go, yeah, man, I used to love collecting Transformers. She meant sex toys. Damn it. She was talking about sex toys, plugs, etc. Not the sweet G1 protections combiner I had when I was 10 years old. Story 62. Had a guy in a metal chastity cage the other night. Went to lick the end of it to tease him, and my lip ring got caught in it. We were stuck for what felt like 3 minutes. I was trying to hold still so he could unhook me, but couldn't stop laughing. Every time I moved, it pinched the end of his pen. He was simultaneously laughing and screaming in pain. I had the key on me because we would have been screwed. Story 63. Okay, so when I was probably 18, my girlfriend was sleeping over. We weren't supposed to be alone, but everyone else had gone to bed without checking on us, so we decided to have some fun in my room. My room was at the top of the house and had a staircase leading up to the door. I had hung up one of those dangling bead things at the bottom of the steps a long time ago because my door didn't have a lock on it, and my family didn't respect boundaries. So if I heard the beads moving, I would know that I had about 0.5 seconds before someone came barging into my room, which was better than nothing. So it's probably 11 p.m. and my GF and I are having some pretty awkward sex when I hear the beads. Panic. I think it's my stepdad coming upstairs to check on us because walking into my room at almost midnight to make sure I was in bed was normal for him. So I move as fast as I've ever moved in my life. I threw the blankets over my GF to cover her up. I'd left my pants around my ankles for just this situation, so I reached down and yanked them up as fast as possible. The issue with this was that I had only managed to grab hold of my pants, not my underwear. This resulted in the underwear rolling up my very hairy legs, taking lots of said hair with it, and giving me the most painful self-inflicted wedgie of all time. Having no time to acknowledge the pain I was suddenly in, I rushed to the door to open it, trying to come up with some excuse as to why I was in a room alone with my GF. I opened the door, and to my surprise, there was no one there. I looked down a little bit, and staring up at me with his big, dumb face was my family's dog. My GF and I laughed about it after I was done unwedging myself, but sexy time was definitely over. Story 64. In my senior year of high school, I came home and could not find our dog. I looked all around the downstairs and the backyard. At this point, panic ensued. I go upstairs and my stepsister's door is cracked. I open the door, and there's our family dog going to town on my stepsister. First there was shock, then horror, from both parties, and I straight said, "What a hell?" and went straight to my room. A couple of minutes later, she opens my door and proceeds to beg me to not tell her dad, and I'm telling her to just be quiet and go to her room. I wasn't going to say anything. Well, her dad works split shifts, which means he works 4 hours on and 8 off. At this point, it's time for him to be getting up, 3 p.m.-ish, and she won't shut up. I'm imploring her to just go back to her room and be quiet. Next thing I know, her dad walks out of his bedroom and starts asking what's wrong. I tried hard to just tell him that it was nothing, but he was persistent. Finally, I had to tell him that I walked in on his daughter, getting her ass licked by Teddy. Damn, it was awkward for a while. Unfortunately for me, I still remember it every time I see her, and it's been almost 15 years. I think I'm more traumatized by it than anyone in our household. Story 65, late 90s. I was a teenager, maybe 14-15s, and I was babysitting a family friend's toddler. The kid went down for a nap, and I jumped on the parents' computer. I did a pretty thorough boob search for about 15, 20 minutes, and then I heard the garage door opening. I immediately turned off the computer. It didn't hit me for a few years that when they turned it back on, everything I searched for was stored and possibly even opened up to whatever site I was on. I've been embarrassed about that memory for over 20 years now. Story 66. Oh man. We had my siblings over for Cinco de Mayo this year, and we're going to do a taco bar. I went into the kitchen to get all the toppings prepared and chopped some tomatoes, red onion, jalapenos, etc. I was about to head outside to toss the shrimp, chicken, and steak on the grill when I decided to take a quick piss first. I dropped my pants, touched my pen, and started peeing. About midstream, it felt like my pen was on fire. I didn't wash my hands after chopping the jalapenos. I was screaming like a madman and started dosing it in water using one of those bathroom paper cups. Washing it with soap and water did nothing, and I was still screaming. I started shouting for my wife to bring me a glass of milk to dunk it in. She kept asking why, and I kept shouting to just get the milk. By the time I came out of the bathroom, I had a red pen and a crowd of people were dying laughing. Story 67. Neighbors came over to hang out in the backyard. Family of 5, older parents, 3 kids that go to the same university as me. One kid brings over their Bluetooth speaker when mine dies. I sync it to my phone and play music for the evening. Next day, I wake up to study BC finals. But before I study, I decide So I find an adult film that I like, hit play, and wonder why there's no sound. I turn up the volume all the way, wondering if my phone speaker is broken. I mute, unmute, close, reopen, refresh, use different browser. I was very determined. Couldn't figure it out, so I eventually gave up. Decided to watch it without sound. After maybe 2 minutes, the sound on my phone turns on, says Bluetooth connection lost. I almost threw up right then when I realized my phone was connected to their speaker still and they were hearing, at full volume, the video I was watching. Absolutely mortifying. Till this day, I have random flashbacks and wish I was dead sometimes. Story 68. When I was 5 or 6 years old, my mom was having a dinner party with some new friends. I'd been put to bed for the night, and I randomly, unaroused, got my little banana. I learned that I could move it up and down if I flexed it. I thought this was so cool that I needed to share it with somebody. So I ran out to the dining room, totally naked, and proceeded to show an entire dinner party my new pen trick. Everyone was mortified, and I was confused why no one thought it was cool. Story 69. I ducked my car. I had a very unsatisfying hookup, and on the drive home, everything was getting me frisky. The feeling of my clothes touching my body, the shifter in my hand as I worked through the gears. By the time I got home, I was so ridiculously horny that I threw a condom on the shifter and ducked the car. Story 70. Not me, but when my parents were younger, my mom and dad were at his house having sex when my grandma, my dad's stepmom, suddenly announced she was coming up the stairs to give my dad his laundry. They both panicked. My grandma didn't even know my mom was there. So my mom ran into his closet and he stayed in his bed to cover up. My grandma walked in with his clothes and started putting them away, and she opened his closet to find my mom, standing there inches away from her face, completely naked. Without a word, my grandma shut the door and walked out of the room. Lamau. And then later, my mom had to stay for dinner. None of them have ever spoken about it. Story 71. I once tried to send my boyfriend a picture of my boobs via Snapchat. I don't know what exactly happened or how. It might be that my fingers were still a little slippery from the bath that I had taken. A long story short, it happened that I accidentally clicked on another guy I didn't even know and sent the boob pic to both my boyfriend and that guy. I was dying out of worry and embarrassment. Snapchat told me that guy has screenshotted my pic. I begged him to delete it. He said he has. I will never know for sure though, but he only said I have nice boobs and my face is luckily never on my nudes. So I guess. Story 72. When I was 19M and my GF18F, we were getting it hot and heavy in my room. The door had a decorative glass and iron part, and the glass was missing from an earthquake that shattered it months prior. It had just some cardboard to cover it. My sister, that was 27F at the time, was supposed to be at work, but she forgot something and came back. She heard my GF moaning, and sure enough, she broke the cardboard a little to see inside my room. Immediately saw my GF back as she was writing like her life depended on it. She started yelling some crap about me getting her pregnant. She was on the pill. My GF got really embarrassed and scared my sister would tell her parents or family. It was shameful both to my GF and me, but mostly, course, if you hear a couple having sex and you're mostly sure it's a family member, why the duck would you try to see that? Story 73. Having sex with my wife, then girlfriend, in the back of my car when a bright light shines in the window. Cop asks, "What's going on here?" I calmly respond, "Just having sex, sir." He was nice. Told us it was technically public nudity and it would be best if we just hightailed it out of the parking lot. Story 74. This isn't so much one about me as it is my friend, but I was there to witness it. My friend has a very strict mom, but she really liked me, so I got to hang out at their house a lot. Me and my friend became very close, and they were very religious. So I had no idea, my friend being a Christian, that he would do anything sexual in the slightest. To my surprise, one time I went to his house, and it was normal up until the next morning when we were eating breakfast and his mom went through his phone. Out of nowhere, she comes into the kitchen and yells my friend's name and says, "Why are you looking up biggest boobs, biggest butts?" I turned to my friend trying to hold back a laugh, but he was not amused. He went into a room with his mom, and to make matters worse, he said he's only done it a couple times. It's not a big deal. His mom calmed down and talked to us both about how there's no light in looking at girls with big privates online. I have never brought this back up to my friend, but man, it was so funny. Story 75. This makes me realize I never really had a shameful NSFW moment. Maybe my soldier not standing at attention when I was really nervous once or twice. But one time when I was in 8th grade, my 6th grader cousin was supposed to walk his teacher's digital camera to the yearbook class. He just walked in a bathroom and took like 20 pics, if you know what I mean. And then just gave the camera to the yearbook teacher, immediately suspended for the year. Story 76. Mine's happened at work. I had this pair of pants that were high-waisted and zipped and clasped in the back instead of front. I work retail and apparently had forgotten to zip them back up. They were at least clasped after using the restroom. I was wearing very sheer panties and kept wondering why these two customers kept finding reasons to come back to the store until I felt a breeze along my backside. I was completely mortified then, but laugh about it now. Sometimes you just have to roll with the punches. Story 77. When my wife and I were dating, we lived about 45 miles apart. We would spend weekends together at her place, and normally she'd come down to where I lived on Wednesdays. I can't think of a park in town we didn't have sex in at least once. And basically every building we could sneak into at the university where I was a grad student. One night, our search for a place to bone took us to the building where the U had biology and chemistry. It's about 1 a.m., so no one around. We find an unused classroom and get down to it. Normally, my wife is quite quiet when she finishes, just who she is, but this night I must have hit every right spot. She screamed, "Right there, oh my, calm now!" And of course, being the dutiful lover I am, I followed directions. We get dressed, and as we're walking down the hallway to find her a bathroom to clean up, we didn't need condoms since she was on the pill, we passed a very red-faced Chinese chemistry grad student with whom I'm faintly acquainted. Sorry, Shang. Story 78. I was about 18 and had a GF at the time. We would always go into the finished basement to have sex to try and be sneaky. After we do it, I throw the condom in the toilet, flush it, and we go upstairs to bed. The next morning, my mom tells me, "Hey, there's a condom in the toilet downstairs. Get it out. The real estate agent is coming by to check out the houses." Well, my dumbass forgot, and my mom made sure to let me know it was still there when I got home from school the next day. After the real estate agent had been there, also same GF. But after we had dinner, she was giving me a BJ in her room. I told her to try to deep throat, and she threw up a ton of spaghetti, tomato sauce, garlic bread, and Diet Coke all over me. Story 79. When I was in HS, I went on a trip with my GF and her parents in their RV to go glamping. Being horny, she decided to start giving me a BJ under some blankets while her parents were outside of the trailer. Her mom came in and started having a full-on conversation with me while she was in the kitchen of the RV while I was getting the old pepper grinder action. A couple feet away and my GF just kept going. I finished. Her mom was just smiling while talking, looking at us. Then her father came into the RV and said, "Remove the blanket because I know what you are doing." Well, he ripped the blanket off, and let's just say that was one of my biggest nuts I ever did. I sat there trying to hide myself. GF yelling at dad, dad yelling at GF. Mom was still smiling and looking at me. Story 80. Not really shameful, but a few years ago. Getting a BJ from my ex on a park bench at night in Central Park, Manhattan. A dude jogging by saw this and gave me a thumbs up, which I returned mid-BJ. NYC is such a wild place.